पाजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह पाजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह गुर सेवा ते भगत कमाई तब ये मानस देही पाए इस देही को सिमरै देव सो देही भज हर की सेव सो देही भज हर की सेव भजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह.
Hi everyone, good to see you all today. So this is the beginning of the new format, and I think you've been all told about that. It's going to be just a question and answer session. However, because this is being recorded also for YouTube, I have to do an introduction to the concept for people who are going to come across the channel for the first time. So I'll have to read a general introduction and then we can get on with the question and answers. Okay, so please be patient for that, because that part of it is intended for YouTube listeners and podcast listeners. Okay, so if we're ready, we'll begin. Yeah, great. Okay, so welcome friends to another podcast in the Holy Truth series, given as always in the name of the Supreme Lord, who wishes to impart the very highest truth of what many call God, life and creation to the sincere seekers of the world, based upon the high truth of the noble path of Sant, path of the true saints, also known as the universal truth, true spirituality or true religion by many others. In this sense, one can see that the highest truth of the Supreme Lord encompasses all true faiths, philosophies or beliefs under the one high truth of all, details of which can be viewed or listened to on our YouTube channel via the Holy Discourses series of ISTAuk. But before I begin today's session of spiritual questions and answers, I would first like to make a short introduction in response to the many inquiries we often receive from high truth seekers around the world about who we truly are and what we represent as ISTA International, etc. Therefore, please allow me to do so, as this is our first extended Q&A only session. We are the International Spiritual Truth Association, or ISTA for short, and although now global, we originally set up in 2016 in the UK by request of the Holy Masters of the day, who derived their authority from Great Master Baba Saban Singh Ji of the Bias lineage in India. Now our mission is simple: to tell the full truth about true spirituality or true religion from the Supreme Lord's point of view directly, especially for the modern age, so lovingly given to the saint with no name since 2012. Now, since this high teaching is an age-old path of true knowledge, known today as the Holy Truth of Sant, which has been discreetly taught throughout the ages to the most sincere seekers of the time, alongside the more familiar religious or philosophical teachings that were aimed at elevating the masses to the point of higher truth seeking, we do not bring any new teaching, but instead wish to rightly explain the simple high truth of what has been revealed thus far by the great holy masters of the past, such as Jesus Christ, the noble prophets, the great Buddha, the Sikh Gurus, the Bhakti saints of India, and many others. This is because, sadly, they have been grossly misrepresented in modern times. In this regard, we are not affiliated to any particular religion, philosophy, or spiritual path practiced today as a formal institution or mass belief system. Instead, we represent the age-old high truth of personal instruction by the Supreme Lord, who has so lovingly taught that high truth throughout the ages via the rare holy visitors to earth, though naturally to various levels of comprehension to the peoples of the time. Therefore, our mission here today is aimed at the very highest spiritual truth. Indeed, as a spiritual education and guidance center only, under the authority of the Supreme Lord, we most earnestly and humbly support the true holy masters, perfect saints, and noble mystics of today, who tirelessly and selflessly work to save the sincere seekers of the highest truth in modern times from the minefield of religious and cultural confusion, thus empowering them to rise above the limitations of the human form, as well as their institutionally veiled mind. The ultimate goal of this noble practice, therefore, as has been the case throughout human history, is to attain one's own high truth and knowledge amidst the struggle and confusion of modern times, and to thus, after countless lifetimes of toil, trial, and drama in karmic creation, finally return home to one's true origin of love and bliss in the supreme kingdom of truth or God, when they are ready, of course, all while living the gift of a newly blessed life for the remainder of their time here on earth, thus experiencing a form of heavenly existence on earth without the inconvenience of having to die first, though death brings even greater joy. As for myself, a sincere devotee of the highest truth of Holy Sant, who has given his life in the service of the true Lord, I do not seek any recognition, fame, or reward. I act solely with the authority and by request of the Supreme Lord itself and the holy masters of today, to simply tell the full truth of God, life, and creation for the modern age. Apart from this, I live the life of a mortal being who has surrendered to the will of the Lord until any further request from my beloved masters, who graciously saved this wretched sinner from the struggle of worldly existence and mercifully connected him with the Supreme Lord, as simple demonstration that anyone from any background could do the same if they are truly sincere, will instruct. I speak, therefore, as one who personally knows the high truth of the Supreme Lord, and as one who lives in the Supreme Lord's will. Thus, I offer my humble demonstration and services to all who seek the same. Hence, I am here with you today in this role. Therefore, as a co-traveler on this noble path to God realization, I only ask that you put aside my human mortality and instead listen to and take heed of the loving message that the Supreme Lord has to offer you via this humble form. But before I begin this talk, I would first like to say a few more words of introduction to you. Everything I shall share with you today is a gift of wisdom direct from the Lord itself, for the sincere seekers of high spiritual truth. As for myself, I am a simple messenger, a friend, who the true Lord has gifted with direct knowledge of the path of the holy truth, which I have been asked to share with you. So although I shall speak with the authority of one who has been instructed to do so by the Supreme Lord, please do not attempt to praise or glorify this humble messenger in any way, for you too are all divine beings undergoing a human experience in this lifetime, though you may not yet be aware of this. Therefore, what is given to me freely by the highest authority, I give to you the same. In return, I only ask that you open your heart and mind to the holy truth that the Supreme Lord has to offer you. Now, the purpose of these spiritual meetings or satsangs is not to just teach about the high truth of true spirituality to newcomers, but to also remind those already following a high spiritual path about the importance of spiritual practice in our daily life. It therefore gives encouragement and support to existing practitioners, while also correcting the many myths and controversies regarding the path of true spirituality in modern times. The trouble is that we tend to get so involved in our worldly affairs that we often put aside our spiritual needs in favor of less useful worldly practices. Yet in actual truth, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, and so our spiritual work should actually be our number one priority in life, especially if we want true happiness and peace. Indeed, if we were to see the real truth and purpose of our life, we would have no hesitation in putting our spiritual needs first. In fact, by meeting our spiritual needs first, this takes automatic care of our worldly life and even helps in death. Therefore, as truly spiritual beings, merely having a spiritual or human experience, we should primarily satisfy our spiritual needs, which is far more important than blindly pursuing our worldly life beyond that of our essential duties, which are only relevant to us for a short while. The truth is that for countless millions of Earth years, involving countless cycles of births and deaths in countless forms, we have been aimlessly wandering in creation, lost and bewildered. Indeed, many cycles of the ages have come and gone, and countless numbers of forms have we endured to even reach human birth, a form that is the envy of all forms in creation. And do not be fooled by the concept of living only once, as some may believe, simply because you cannot remember your previous existences, lest you become a wandering fool in life. There is great evidence to show that we transmigrate from one form to another in this creation. Simple examples include the undeniable truth of the near-death experiences of countless peoples of the world, who can clearly describe all the events that took place around them, and even far from them, while proven to be clinically, meaning physically, dead, which firmly proves the existence of life consciousness beyond the physical body. Also of note is the remarkable number of young children around the world who vividly and accurately recall their previous life on earth till their current life takes over. Likewise, the peoples of history and the present continuously recognize the mysterious existence of remarkable human beings who, while of sound mind, recall higher dimensions of existence within the conscious realms of creation, in which they confirm that they similarly exist but other dimensionally, and so confidently affirm that our higher state of existence is the true source of our lower earthly existence. They further say that whilst we are here, we have to endure the trials and tests of our dramas here on earth, born of ignorance, till we get fed up of it all and become a seeker of high truth, hopefully before our opportunity is lost. Indeed, they say, that death is not a tragedy, but dying before one reaches spiritual awareness is the real tragedy. Yet despite all the evidence around us, what do we choose to do with our precious human life? We squander it away in seeking trivia, base human pleasures, power and wealth, which are in actual fact all transitory, unreliable, and end in disappointment. This squandering of our precious time while in the human form is further witnessed by us about others, through our knowledge of all the great kings, celebrities and beauties, etc., who have come before us, yet take nothing with them, not even their own bodies at the time of death. And like them in time, no one will even care if we had ever existed once we are gone. Indeed, all the great things we may have built for ourselves and for our family will be crumbled away by the very people whom we treasured so much and trusted to preserve it in time. If only we knew how hard it is to get a human birth, and that the chance of getting another one is so difficult, we would not waste it away so easily. The further truth is that we have already had countless friends, families, and associates in the past whom we equally adored, just as we do with our present ones now. But what has become of them? They have returned to the dust from where they came, and so have we, never to be remembered even. So one should ask themselves this: what should I really do with my human life to make the best use and meaning of it, so as to not continue to cycle through endless births and deaths, or the unknown, while also improving our lot in this lifetime? Well, that is the subject of these spiritual meetings for all who are ready to listen. But once we recognize the real truth within our hearts, through repeated encounters with the wise and the enlightened ones, then we, as a child of God, are entitled to ask for the full haq, meaning birthright, of our absolute truth, just as is the case here on earth, where a son or daughter has a right to all that their father has by the fact of birthright. But if that child turns away from their father and becomes a beggar in the street through wanton desire, or becomes egotistically proud of their self-reliance, thus choosing to struggle in order to survive, rather than enjoying the father's wealth, even after having been told about their noble heritage, then that is a sad and pitiful existence for that child, from the father's point of view. And that is how the true Lord, our heavenly Creator, sees us. In truth, we are all children of the divine, and so are entitled to everything that the Lord has, if we sincerely acknowledge that and request it. Indeed, upon our sincere asking and the right attitude, the Lord similarly cannot refuse, as long as we are wise enough to know how to use it. Therefore, armed with this knowledge, each one of us, with sincerity and yearning in our heart for the highest goal of our spiritual truth, can and should respectfully request our haq, or birthright, of true knowledge and salvation from our Creator, the Supreme Lord, so as to become once again great, just like our Lord. Indeed, upon such a sincere and earnest request, the true Lord cannot refuse us, and that is the real truth of spiritual seeking and practice. However, for most human beings, it is only when they need something that they ask for it, else they ignore it. This is the same with spirituality. Only when we suffer, feel lonely, or feel that something is missing from our life, do we consider becoming a seeker of truth and wisdom. Else we engross ourselves in worldly trivia that ultimately leads us nowhere. This is the pitiful state for most human beings today, and that is why true joy evades them. You see, with the absence of peace and joy enshrined in one's heart, they seek never-ending pleasures outside, with all the attendant problems that come along with it. But the fact is that actual joy is a spiritual experience, and so cannot be had from worldly pleasures, which is why no one is completely satisfied with the pleasures of the world, no matter how much they have, and so constantly seek more. Look at your own life to see it for yourself. You are likely to be so much more better off than many others in the world, who live in poor countries with freak weather, famine or shortage as the norm, or in war-torn nations, or under dictatorship without freedom. Yet still we demand more, under ungrateful for the stable, peaceful and safe lives of abundance we have here. Thus we are still unhappy much of the time, just like those others we say are unfortunate. Isn't that just strange? We crave greed for more in our heart, even though we have enough to live on and enjoy. Thus I say to you all, wake up, dear soul, from your sorrowful slumber. Why are you keeping the company of ignorance, suffering, and struggle? They are all swindlers who trick you into following their selfish ways. That always ends in misery. But thou art soul, a drop of the divine ocean of Satgurus, the true Lord, in which eternal bliss resides. This earthly confine that you cherish today will abandon you tomorrow without remorse. This is because it is not your true home. It is the home of your enslaver, known as Maya or illusion. Break ties with illusion and recognize your true glory as a son or daughter of the Supreme Lord. Thus I say to you all, do not revere illusion. Rejoice in your true form, the soul. The physical body is but a garment you have adopted to live in the world of Maya. It is not your true form. Thus I say again, give up this deception before it's too late, and devote yourself to the Holy Spirit or Shabad within you. For that is the truth, the light and the way that brings true joy, which manifests itself as a holy master, perfect saint or noble mystic in every age. Such a blessed one can show you the way back to your true home, the true kingdom of God. As such, they are the embodiment of divine truth, love and forgiveness. They are infinitely merciful too, and are non-judgmental. Hence, they accept sinners and saints alike into their care, making both worthy of receiving the holy truth of Satnam, the true Lord. They steer us away safely across the sea of illusion to the ocean of bliss, truth and love. Therefore, how can we ever think or thank them for their compassion and their mercy? What's more, this remarkable truth can be discovered by each and every one of us when we are ready. Meanwhile, others will merely pass them by or scoff at them as mad. Yet still they do not mind, for they know the true condition of each and every one of us. What else can I tell you about their true greatness and glory? Only the deepest gratitude forever resounds within my heart for having been saved by them, and thus spiritually awakened. Now I join them in the playground of this world as proof of their true greatness. Without spiritual awakening, there is no lasting peace or comfort in this world. Hence, one living being kills another, exploits another, deprives one of honor, robs one of wealth, and snatches away one's peace. Here, there is fire blazing everywhere in the form of struggle and suffering. Even if you want to live in peace, others will not let you. Even if you do not want to associate with the world, a thief commits a theft, a mugger mugs a victim, an accident takes place, a crop of a farmer fails, the business of a businessman collapses, the kingdom of a king is taken away, the health of one's body gets afflicted, and so on. In other words, there is nothing safe here. The kingdom of the kings, and the honor of the respected, and the wealth of the wealthy, the strength of the powerful, and even our bodies can be suddenly snatched away. Young sons and daughters die in front of their parents. Parents die, leaving their breastfeeding children crying and sobbing. The young become widows or destitute through wars, and many others cruel things happen around us. As such, we are compelled to bear a mountain of sorrows. Just think about it for a moment. Is this place really worthy of our devotion? Regardless of our answer, we are helplessly living here due to our karmas, and sadly for most, they do not see any way out of this cage of illusion. Thus we have become used to causing grief to others, and of suffering grief upon ourselves. We have forgotten our real home in Satgurus, in which our true origin Lord resides, in supreme peace and bliss. Indeed, in the true Lord's realm, there is no birth, no death, no old age, no sorrows, no unrest, no give and take, no struggle, no ill health, no pain or suffering, no fear. Only the joy, bliss and love of perfect existence. So what are you waiting for if you're not already pursuing true happiness of your soul? Holy Masters tell us that we, the true self, are trapped in the prison house of our body and mind, but accept this condition because we don't know anything else. We have no remembrance of the time when we were free souls, nor a time when we were with our beloved Creator, and so cannot comprehend an existence outside of our body. Because of this ignorance, we ultimately need to find a way out, if true and lasting happiness is our goal, which becomes even more urgent when we suffer even more. In fact, for those who are ready, knowledge and suffering usefully combine to turn our attention towards escape, especially if we are fortunate enough to realize it, rather than merely enduring life in misery, ignorantly seeking random or harmful pleasures as a poor remedy. Thus, we need to understand and seek one who knows the true answer to real happiness and joy. This knowing one we can call by any name, but throughout history they have been hailed as the Holy Masters, perfect saints, Sant Satgurus, or noble mystics, etc., by various cultures. Today, they simply refer to themselves as a true knower, a spiritual friend, or an enlightened one, who holds the key to our salvation, while the true Lord has entrusted in their care since time began, since we can better relate to them than to a more abstract concept of God or Saviour that religions follow. Once this acknowledgement is attained, it frees us forever from the bondage of our physical and mental limitations. As the religions say, seek the real truth, and that truth shall set you free. Thus we become free souls once again, able to enjoy the full extent of the Lord's creation, just like the Lord itself. Now isn't that worth pursuing? Hence may the true Lord bless you all in this happy endeavour. I wish you all the very best. Now for those who need further assistance, they may privately and confidentially contact the main speaker directly via email or video if needed, by first subscribing to our valuable information service at www.istauk.com and then requesting the direct contact details of our speaker from our administrators. He will endeavour to answer all spiritual questions within 48 hours of receipt, but please be patient if he should take a little longer due to his busy schedule, projects and number of inquiries. So thank you, and let's now begin with the question and answer session.
Thank you. The first question is around meditation, and there's a bit of a statement first and then the question after. I wonder sometimes that we have been placed in an environment or these surroundings by chance or by choice, where family members who are not on the path or who are non-believers and consume animal products, etc. Therefore, we want them also to somehow understand the teachings of this path, follow a different lifestyle, diet, etc. But it's not possible to convince them, since each individual brings their own impressions and destiny. So the question is, I would like to know if meditation influences our outer circumstances and people around us too. Example, do they become more positive and bring about a change in their attitudes, diet and lifestyles, so that it helps the devotee create a favourable environment?
Well, yes, naturally. Spiritual practice brings the energy of the true Lord within you. It empowers the soul. The soul therefore becomes more powerful. If the soul is more powerful and it represents positivity, then naturally those who are around you will feel the essence or vibration of that positivity, and it alters them. It makes them become questioning within. It makes them look at you or look at the world more closely and wonder why things are the way they are. In other words, it starts making them think higher things. It awakens their higher mind. Because the higher mind of an individual, or spiritual mind that we all have, is the closest to our soul. Therefore, it's the first to get influenced by any soul vibration. The intellectual and lower minds respond later. So that feeling that people get without understanding why around somebody who is spiritually practicing correctly or enlightened is something that they cannot understand, but it pulls them towards higher thinking and more noble lifestyle. So definitely it creates a more favorable environment when somebody is meditating or spiritually practicing sincerely within any community or even within their family or among their friends. They definitely help others without others realizing that they're helping them, or even without them realizing that they're helping others.
Thank you. I've got a few questions around fasting. What is spiritual fasting and its benefits?
Well, this is a religious concept, but it also has some practical applications. The idea of fasting is to reduce the amount of food that you take into the body, which has to be processed and digested and so on, which A, requires energy, and B, clogs the system a little bit, creating something called brain fog or a little bit of dulling the mind. So when you consume foods, they are biologically necessary, but when you are spiritually trying to attain a higher form of thinking, they weigh you down. So the principle behind spiritual fasting is when you are undergoing a particular spiritual exercise, such as an intensive meditation retreat or something of that sort, that you eat far less or not eat at all and just drink fluids. And it definitely clears the mind and makes you feel lighter within your body and therefore more able to concentrate.
I think you've answered this next question. Is spiritual fasting beneficial towards reaching higher consciousness?
Yes, it definitely helps, as I just explained, because for a spiritual practitioner, the objective is to raise their attention to higher consciousness levels. So therefore, anything that weighs us down, such as food, emotions, analysis, intellectual analysis, and all these other things, must be in some way done away with in order for us to rise up into higher states of thinking. So yes, it definitely allows us to reach higher states of consciousness.
Supreme Master Ching Hai speaks of fasting on her retreats. So do many holy masters fast?
I think mostly yes, especially in the beginning, because they are so stunned, let's say, by what they see with the glimpses of the divine within, that they want more. And as a result of that, they lose interest in worldly phenomena. So to fast from the world also means to keep away from the maddening crowd, from the hustle and bustle. Fasting is not just of food, it's also in the environment. So a lot of these people go away to retreats, mountains and caves, because they want that peace of mind, as well as eating less, so that they're able to raise their consciousness still higher in an undisturbed way. So yes, holy masters do fast regularly, and in fact fast daily for the rest of their life, because they only eat one meal a day mostly, and maybe then have an odd snack here or there. Sometimes they do not even eat at all, they'll just have some fluids.
Just to add to that, is that why people go on, I don't know, silent retreats, because they're fasting away from
Yes.
the community?
Yes, it's a form of fasting away from the world, yeah.
Okay. The last question regarding fasting. Can you expand on why Jesus fasted for 40 days and what is the significance of 40 days of fasting?
Well, in keeping with all masters, naturally, Jesus being a master of his time, would practice the same system of fasting. It's not new, it's ancient. The system of fasting and spiritual practice is as old as humankind. So Jesus fasted for 40 days. Now, 40 days does have some significance because after 40 days, the last remnants of food intake that you have taken previously and detoxification is complete. So in theory, biologically anyway, after 40 days, your mind becomes the clearest it has ever been. So that's why, for example, in Islam, they follow the same line of Jesus and do the 40 days of fasting in Ramadan, and so on. And other cultures, like in Hinduism, they fast as well, although now they fast for just 1 day or 2 or 3 days, because people can't do the fastings of the times of ancient times in India, the yogis used to do. So yeah, I mean, that's the reason why the 40 days is significant.
So regarding these 40 days, would they have not had any water neither?
No, they would have taken water, because breatharianism is something else. To be a breatharian, you have to really isolate yourself from the world. So, for example, some monks in ancient Tibet, and even today, fasted just on air. And they never used water or drink, but they never moved from their cave. They sat stationary like a stone, and they just meditated and contemplated within, because their attention was drawn within, albeit at lower levels, but still withdrawn. So therefore, the body goes into a kind of hibernation mode. Breatharianism is the ultimate fasting, but it's not recommended for people who live household lives, who have families and have to go to work. You know, it can be quite antisocial, I would say.
Because those people who do breatharianism, are they getting some kind of support from the sun as well?
Yes, I mean, breatharianism itself is a whole concept, and it involves taking energy from the environment. It's not just the sun. When they breathe air, the air contains numerous gases and molecules and elements, even water vapor, because most atmospheres are around 70% moisture. So they can get moisture and they can get the electrical energy, magnetic energy through the breath. A lot of this is not fully understood by humans yet, but they will in the future understand that our biological cells are more than just chemical factories. They're also sensitive in quantum mechanics terms or quantum physics terms at the molecular and atomic level. And therefore, it doesn't matter where they get their atoms and molecules from, they can utilize them to provide energy and keep the system going. This is futuristic at the moment, but in the future it will become known. In fact, by the end of this century.
So would you say breatharianism?
Sorry, yes.
Sorry.
So I've got questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
My parents' generation fasted a lot.
Yeah.
But the fasting was in the sense of they would make a pact with God.
Yes.
So it was almost like, if I fast, I will gain something.
Yes, that's a modern interpretation. Unfortunately, because humans are selfish in nature, they don't believe in doing something for nothing. So therefore, if they're prepared to make a sacrifice like fasting, they say, okay, what's the deal in it for me? If I fast, what can you give me? So they fast for motives, not because they want truth realization or they want to closer to their origin, their Lord, but because they want something from him, you see. And of course they don't get it. It doesn't work like that. But it doesn't stop them, because the books are written in such a way that in the past, the ancient yogis never did that. You'll never hear the ancient yogis saying, look, I want the car, I want my family to be okay, I want my health to improve, I want my son, daughter, married, or whatever. They never used to fast for these reasons. They used to fast for spiritual reasons. But in the modern age, we've now turned something very spiritual into something very unholy and very human-like. In other words, if I go to work, I don't want to be not paid. I want to get something out of the work, otherwise I'm not turning up. So that's the modern day fasting, which is a shame, because they're missing out on something really powerful there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, with the breatharianism, is that the highest level then of fasting, would you say?
Yes. What else can you give up?
Just wondered.
Well, actually, having said that, there are monks in the Himalayas who meditate permanently in the caves. They never leave the cave, so they never drink or they never eat for many, many years. But also, for 6 months of the year, the cave, when it snows, the snow slowly slides down and blocks the entrance of the cave. So for 6 months of the year, they even run out of air. Yet they still survive.
Wow.
They live on the prana, the energy that already exists within their body. They have taken it to another state of existence. in which they can just recycle everything within their body automatically through spiritual energy. So many things are possible that they defy ordinary logic, but according to science and physics and quantum mechanics, many things are possible that are not obvious to us now.
I guess I'm thinking, what are the real benefits of doing that? If you really wanted to go there, is it that significant from someone who would do a regular fast?
It's very significant, but then for those people, they cannot take part in the world, nor can they offer anything to anyone else. It's a very isolated and singular path. And if you think about that, if the Holy Masters came here, did exactly that, who would ever benefit from their teachings? So a balance, like the Buddha said, take the middle road, live a balanced life. In other words, eat one meal a day, live a simple life, keep away from the mad crowd and the clutter of the world. And therefore, you can help others whilst helping yourself. And therefore, it's a much less selfish way of living. So I agree with that. And Holy Masters you tend to find do exactly that.
Thank you. I've got a few questions around the mind. Why does our mind feel so powerful?
Because we allow it. If you identify yourself with your character, would you not follow everything the character dictates?
Yes.
It's like if we are an actor on the stage and the director tells us, in this part, here's the script, you must follow this script, no matter what. Don't have your own ideas, just follow the script. What can the actor do but follow the script? Because he's attached himself to that part. In this case, to get paid. Yeah, he's getting some benefit out of it, he believes. So therefore, he attaches himself to the part and plays the part. But should he ever come off the stage and realize his true self, in fact that he has a family at home and everything else, then he suddenly stops this and does things for himself. So because we give the mind so much power, because we believe our identity so much, the one who suffers is the soul, as well as the higher mind, because the mind has several aspects, as we'll go into in a moment. But the higher mind is spiritual mind, and it's not interested in this world at all. It wants to go to the realm of the mind, the origin of the mind itself, that superconscious state of high vibration in which the mind is free from the fetters of the body. So, but the lower mind, emotional mind, likes the idea of having a sensory body, and therefore that's the one we're most connected to, and that's why we express ourselves emotionally. And when people have a powerful mind, they usually talk about somebody who's very emotional and very vocal and very out there and on a mission to either harm the world or help the world.
So if someone wanted to get away from their powerful mind, what's the best way forward for them?
The only way to detach from something is to attach yourself to something better. There is no way that you can just sit there and say, that's it, I'm going to ignore my lower mind and only dwell in higher mind thoughts. It's just not possible just by doing that. But if we attach ourselves to, say, a spiritual practice that empowers the higher mind and the soul, then these automatically subdue the lower mind. So by attaching ourselves to something higher, it subdues the lower.
Thank you. How many layers are there to the mind, and what can we do to awaken our higher mind?
Yes, I've just explained that the mind has 3 levels of consciousness. Now, because of this, historically, a lot of people get confused and thinking that they've attained some sort of spiritual merit or have become enlightened in some way. Because let's say they've entered into spiritual mind. And spiritual mind is much more evolved than the lower mind or physical related mind, emotional mind. Now, because of this, they think they've become enlightened, and therefore they teach others how wonderful and peaceful it is to live in higher mind, which it is. But it's not the end game. But they don't know any different. So definitely we witness different layers of the mind. That's why when we look at certain people, we see that, okay, there are those ordinary individuals who are very emotionally led. They live the day-to-day life of mundane existence. They have no interest even in intellectual pursuits. Then you have those intellectual ones, the academics, the scholars, the scientists. They search for the truth through intelligence, through intellect, and through logical reasoning. And that's the next level of mind. There, emotions have no part, because the intellectual has to require clear thinking. So therefore they must be unbiased theoretically in what they do. When you're searching for the truth intellectually, you have to put aside your emotional preferences, especially as a scientist, let's say, or a philosopher, and you have to observe the observable world and make note of what you see intellectually. Now that is a form of seeking, but it's not as high as spiritual seeking, but it's still a form of seeking. And people who engage in that activity help humankind greatly, because they're the ones who invent new technologies, find new theories, find answers to our needs. And therefore we live in much more comfort thanks to the scientific or philosophical investigations of the past people. So they help society in some measure, so they're not to be dismissed either. However, then you have the spiritually awakened minds, and these are the people who are the great philosophers, who people today, if they Google the 100 top spiritual leaders of our time, will find all these characters within. But these characters have not transcended the mind. They have not crossed over. They do not even know about the existence of their soul, which is a whole different game altogether. They are so identified with their character, but in a spiritual way. So they look at making use of their body. Like, for example, many spiritual leaders at the time, the number one, I Googled recently who's the number one spiritual leader of our time. It came up with the Dalai Lama. And interestingly, having known him, he hasn't crossed the realm of soul by his own admittance. He doesn't even know that the soul exists. He's reached a state of higher mind thinking, and that higher mind is blissful enough to satisfy his needs, because he's not been shown anything more. Now this is the concept in many spiritual leaders. You have many people who have written philosophical books, and they're set up as spiritual leaders. I believe even Oprah Winfrey now has become some sort of a spiritual leader and a spiritual voice. But yet she hasn't crossed into the soul realm, otherwise she wouldn't be doing that. So these people are mistaken for truly enlightened ones, but they're not. Sometimes though, when the ego gets the better of them, they feel that they're enlightened, and they tell others, I am enlightened, because they have a little bit of a spiritual awareness of the physical and the mental. So they have higher concepts, their comprehension is that much more, that they can baffle us with their philosophical rantings. But their philosophical rantings take us nowhere. In the end, you're just left empty-handed, just as you were when you went to them. You just get impressed by their ability to explain things and by their way of looking at things, and you say, what a marvel it is. Just as if you went to a poetry class and heard a beautiful poem and say how wonderful that poem is, but you go home to the same troubles you left. Whereas a truly enlightened one, who is of the level of the soul, in other words, they're beyond the restrictions of mind and body and karma, they're in a different league altogether. Because their soul has been empowered, they can empower your soul too. For example, it is said that only a lit candle can light other candles. We call this enlightenment. No matter how big the candle is, if it's unlit, it cannot light any other candle in the room. But even a small candle with a flame of enlightenment can light all the other candles, even the biggest candles. So this is the ability of one who's a realized soul. Because they have the light within them of truth, they can impart that to others if they're willing. Whereas somebody who's developed of higher mind, they can give you many philosophical ideas and teachings, but they cannot save in any way. Your plight is just the same. It's just that you are maybe thinking a little bit higher, a little bit better, more noble, which is good for humanity at large, because it brings peace and a little bit of pleasure to the world. Why not? But that's all they can do. Holy masters are masters of the soul, and the soul is the highest form of our existence. Therefore, somebody who's fully awakened at the level of the soul can offer far more than anybody who's fully awakened at the level of the mind.
Thank you. If you are beginning to question what you thought was true, then A, is it the mind causing disruption, or the soul by blocking the soul's ability to reveal the truth? And B, how do you know which one it is giving you their truth?
So if you read that question again, it's a little bit
There's two
unclear.
parts. If you are beginning to question what you thought was true, then A, is it the mind causing disruption or the soul by blocking the soul's ability to reveal the truth? And the second
Yes.
part of the question is, how do you know which one is giving you their truth?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, we've described this already, but not gone into detail about how the mind obstructs the soul. Now, the mind obstructs the soul because it wants to survive. It wants its identity. It wants to be recognized. It wants attention. So when you place your attention on the mind or the character, the mind thrives. It is happy. Now, in that happiness, the thriving mind veils the true self, the soul. So you could say it obstructs the soul. The soul cannot penetrate this veil of darkness because you're so identified and so obsessed with the character of the mind called a jiva that you do not recognize you're actually atma or soul, a part and parcel of the divine. So yes, the mind in that sense does obstruct the true self or the soul.
So how do you know which one is giving you their truth? The truth.
It's difficult to know in the beginning because, like I say, look at all these philosophical leaders who are the spiritual leaders of our time. They believe they have the answers to all our questions, mentally speaking, and they do not see anything higher than their mind. So therefore, for them, they believe that the mind is the highest entity. It's very difficult to know unless somebody comes along and teaches you about the soul and demonstrates to you that knowledge and creates and empowers the soul within you. So you start thinking beyond the physical, beyond the mind, beyond the character. But without the presence of such a one, or without coming into some knowledge about this, how would you ever know? You wouldn't.
And if you're ready to accept that new information as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I've got a few questions around master. How beneficial is it for us to be in the physical presence of the Holy Master?
Very significant, because the Holy Master, we talked about the effect of the environment of somebody who meditates spiritually and so on, and empowers their soul, and that soul creates a positive feeling in the environment around them. Imagine a master who is fully realized, and their presence is magnified because they're fully realized. So it's of great benefit to spend as much time as you can in the company of a master, because your soul is being constantly empowered by such. You're not just relying on your own spiritual practice, but in the absence of that constant contact with the master, they teach you spiritual practice to connect with that master within yourself. So you also have the spiritual form of the master residing within, which you can contact. In the absence of that, simply staying and devoting yourself selflessly to a master of the day gives you great benefit.
Thank you. Can you briefly elaborate on the types and levels of holy visitors that come into this world and how to recognize a perfect living master?
Okay, this is a question I get asked several times, and it's a very significant question because there are many people making many claims out there of what they can offer humanity. And it's important to know that they all have a place, first of all, but this question is asking how to determine whether the person they are following or even listening to is of the highest caliber, is a purely spiritual holy master of the time. In fact, this question has been addressed because there are so many others around it. Similarly, has been addressed historically, and in fact, the holy masters themselves have drawn up 7 points to consider historically when approaching the subject from a human perspective. But apart from these, a decisive fact to note is simply this: were they officially given the authority by a currently recognized holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, by way of public announcement or document, etc., which firmly settles the matter. Now, although this is not always the case, its deed is conclusive. However, if that's not the case, then the historic 7 determining factors, termed 7 holy requirements, have to be considered. And I have written about these in the Holy Books series, so I'm going to read a very short paragraph from the section of the book in which I have helped compile to explain it, because it covers the points very clearly. So allow me to read this short passage from the book. Now, first of these, we're talking about the 7 holy requirements here. The first of these is the manner in which the proposed Holy Master currently lives their life, meaning at the time of the claim. For example, do they follow the strict moral code of right conduct, right speech, and right knowledge? Now, it must be explained that when considering this point, the Master's past should not come into account, since many colourful historic figures became enlightened after a dodgy past through the Lord's glancing transformation, where prior to their enlightenment, they fulfilled the Lord's karmic plan for them, whatever that may have been, just to show that anyone can change and succeed if they sincerely yearn for high true salvation, even if they were considered a villain prior to that. Only certain past actions are counted as eliminating factors, since they are too grave to be overcome in one lifetime. These include all acts of wanton violence, murder, rape, the relish of inciting hate or decisive willful, not incidental harm upon others, willfully obstructing holy masters or peaceful spiritual teachers, willfully willfully and knowingly obstructing humanitarians from helping others and the environment, the willful cheating of others from their hard-earned funds, home, livelihood, or substance, etc. Now notice the word willful, meaning that they have full control of what they're doing and they know the consequences rather than unintentional. This must be explained. That's why the Master used the word willful here. Right? However, since everything is in the hands of the Supreme Lord, there is no judgment on the Lord's part. But certainly, the Lord does not wish to distress truth seekers by presenting to them a hardcore villain just described as a successor, unless there is a very, very good reason to do so. Nevertheless, this is just one factor to consider, as all 7 must be met in order to be sure of the matter. The second key point to note is the classic one of prophecy. This means that a true Holy Master has the innate ability to foresee things that are yet to come, or to know things that ordinary individuals would not be able to know. If this is not the case, then the claimant cannot be all-knowing. The third important point is that of balance, forgiveness, and compassion. If the proposed Holy Master loses their balance when faced with difficulties, accusations, or threats, etc., then such a one cannot be of the highest order. Indeed, if they are subject to fear, mood swings, anger, judgment, enticements, gluttony, greed, favoritism, or pride, etc., then such a one has not risen above the level of base emotions, and so still operates in the karmic world, no matter what their excuse. Fourthly, do they project feelings of genuine love, compassion, and kindness to all who come before them, and to the general public at large, even to non-believers or critics, without pretense? If so, then such a one is at least truly enlightened beyond the karmic realms. Fifthly, do they set themselves up as or claim to be a holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, and thus promote themselves as such by their own will or the will of others, their followers, due to their followers' need to have such a figure, and thus put them on a pedestal above the rest, whereby the assumed Holy Master relishes that position without resistance? then they cannot be anything other. Should they do that, they cannot be anything more than a mere spiritual teacher, or a little advanced but incomplete spiritual practitioner. No true holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic ever takes on such a heavy load lightly, because of the serious consequences of doing so to their soul and to that of their followers, and certainly do not promote themselves as such publicly by making out to be something more than they truly are. Now, sixthly, are they able to answer any question brought before them with confidence, depth of knowledge, and surety? Or do they stumble, fob off inquiries with waffle, or show no personal knowledge of the matter other than that of common knowledge found in books, let's say? And finally, do they exhibit a true, unambiguous, and consistent knowledge of all the realms up to the fifth, and perhaps beyond, without merely parroting what others have said, or without making up stories for what they may believe to be true, but which does not stand the test of real scrutiny, nor compares to the true Holy Master's past or present actual testimony? Now, if this test of 7 holy requirements is not all passed, then there cannot be a true Holy Master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, but can, of course, be a respected spiritual teacher, saintly aspirant, or philosopher, etc. So that hopefully answers that question quite clearly.
Thank you. So based on you saying all that,
yeah,
what attracts us to the Holy Master?
The main thing that attracts us to a Holy Master is because we're a seeker of high truth. The Master possesses that high truth and uses the bond of love. That truth is also a form of love. And therefore they pull us with the love of the truth. So we're attracted to that truth. But not the mind. The soul is attracted to the truth. The mind is questioning it. Why am I following this one? Why am I here? They may even criticize mentally the Master, but they still come and keep coming up to them to complain how they are unhappy with what the Master is saying, or how they don't believe them, but they still can't help coming. So this is the mystery of a true saint or holy master or an enlightened one, because they carry the love of truth within them, and each and every one of us ultimately in the highest form is seeking that truth for ourselves, because there's a bliss associated with that love and truth, but the mind does not comprehend it at the beginning.
Thank you. Is it true that wherever Holy Master has spent time or given a discourse, that place will carry a positive energy?
Naturally. Again, if the Master influences the environment around them, or even a advanced spiritual practitioner, then wherever they reside long enough, that spiritual energy is absorbed by the materials around, like the walls, the floor, the ceiling, the chairs, and everything. Which is why people say that when a Master has been sitting somewhere for a while, and then they go and sit, they suddenly feel all kinds of enlightenment experiences and glimpses and things that they not normally have. So everybody tries to find where the Master used to sit under the tree and sit under the same tree. And now even today, people copy the whole thing. So for example, the Buddha sat underneath something called a peepal tree. It's a big tree in India that grows in the Himalayas and in the northern parts of India in particular, because it has a wide base and lots of large roots that you can find a nice little niche in to sit and meditate. Very convenient. He chose it for convenience rather than because it's spiritual. Yet today, Buddhists go around looking for peepal trees to try the big one, to sit exactly in that tree. And if they don't find it, they won't sit anywhere else, thinking that the tree itself carries power and merit. It doesn't. Yeah, unless the Master just sat there before them and then he left, then yes, it would. But so would any tree. So yeah, I mean, the presence of a Master anywhere for long enough gives an energy, but it starts wearing off. So for example, let's say unenlightened people keep inhabiting and they start indulging in gossip and non-spiritual practice. Eventually it loses all its spiritual energy and there's nothing there anymore. So it only lasts for a short time, maybe up to 40 days.
Thank you. Right, this next question has got a few questions within it, so
okay,
I'll say it all and then I'll break it down.
Right.
Can God be defined as our higher selves? As God is formless, so the likely interpretation would be the source is an empty space. Hence, when we contemplate on the Lord, are we connecting to this empty space? Then why so much of the emphasis is placed on the spiritual form of the Master? I'm not even sure if the majority of us will get to the point of experiencing this.
Okay,
So first bit,
the formlessness interpretation of the Lord and the spirituality. All religions actually and the spiritual paths talk about this formless state, the ultimate state. And actually that's true, but what do we mean by formlessness? This is where the questioner is debating between a state of formlessness and nothing, or empty space, as they say. Formlessness does not relate to space, firstly. Space only occurs in the lower levels of mind and in the regions of karmic creation where drama is to be played out in a period of time. In the purely spiritual realms, there's no space and there's no time. So therefore, that doesn't exist. But what does exist is a type of energy, you could say, a consciousness, a dimension of existence that is impossible to explain to the mind. The mind cannot understand a state in which there's no space and no time, and in fact no doing, perfect stillness. It doesn't understand that because the mind is constantly forever active. The only way the mind can remain alive is by being active. The moment the mind becomes still, it dies. So this is alien to the mind, yet spirituality teaching us that we must still the mind, right? And become still. And so equiposed, so focused that we lose total awareness of anything of doing or having to do anything. And therefore that stillness arises. But that can only be experienced by the soul, whose natural state is stillness. So when we're attaining that state of stillness, that is the condition of the soul. It is just impossible for the mind to be still. But you can rise above the mind. So the Holy Masters teach us not to bother with trying to control the mind or still the mind. Why not just simply rise above it? Bring your attention beyond the level of the mind, so the mind will keep on doing its mind things, but you're not of that awareness, not of that attention. You are now enjoying the bliss of the stillness and majesty and glory of infiniteness of the soul. And the moment you enter back into the mind realm, then you see the mind jumping up and down as normal, trying to find something to do all the time. So the mind and the soul is very different in the way it behaves. So this idea of becoming formless doesn't actually happen to the mind, because the mind can never be so still that it has no form and no activity. It'll have something, but they confuse subtleness, extreme subtleness, with formlessness, because at the very height of the mind, it is active still, but far less. It's still doing something. For example, it's still thinking. Yeah, the mind cannot be devoid of thoughts. That's the way it energizes itself. But what it does, it occupies itself with thoughts of the divine. So by having spiritual thoughts, people of a lower practice consider that they've attained stillness of the mind, or they've attained some spiritual experience, because the mind is now occupied only in spiritual thoughts. But that's not stillness. It's still doing something. It's still active, you see. So there's a little misunderstanding in formlessness. These terms which refer to the soul are used for those practitioners of the mind because they don't know. So from a lower consciousness level, the mind of that state of being looks like it is still, because it's not engaged in any worldly activity or lower activity other than spiritual thought. So there is no empty space in the realm of the mind, because the mind can only exist in time and space. Even at a higher spiritual level, it is finite. It has, as the Holy Masters say, the entire lower creation or karmic creation has a beginning and an end, and therefore it is finite. And the mind operates only within that realm, whereas the soul is infinite. There is no beginning and no end to the soul as such, because time doesn't exist. It is always just now. The level of the soul is always just a moment, that moment and the next moment and the next moment. There's no beginning and no end to those moments. It's just a moment. It's a totally different type of existence that the mind cannot comprehend. So one who's realized of the soul enjoys living in the moment. They try to implement it in the mind, even so the mind disrupts that, trying to give it something to do, or trying to say you must do this, or the body calls upon it, I'm hungry, or I'm cold, or this, or I'm sick, I need to do something. So there's no real rest here. But when you withdraw your attention to the level of the soul and you become absorbed in soul consciousness alone, then this is stillness, and this is a very happy state, because there's nothing to do, nothing to achieve, nothing to aim for. There's no lessons to learn. You know, all the things that people attribute to the mind and they try to attribute it to the soul has nothing to learn. It also has nothing to do. The only way it can do something is by creating the mind tool. And the mind tool operates in time and space. And because it's a tool, like any other tool, it has an action, an activity associated with it. The soul itself doesn't do anything. It's just a spectator. It watches its alter ego or alter identity performing the part of a character in the play. But the soul itself does not take part in this. It is just a spectator. So the soul remains pure and perfect and still, whereas the mind takes on many different roles. So that's essentially the difference between the two.
Thank you. Do you feel you've answered the whole of that question? Because I know
I hope so. if there's something missing, then if anybody in the audience has spotted something I've not answered, then you can ask. But
well, I couldn't comprehend all of it. I'm just saying that's
okay. Fair enough.
Right. Next question. I have started to feel tired sometimes. I mean, tired of playing a character in this creation, and feel very strongly to leave and be with my Holy Master. I have been feeling that way at moments when Master's pull of love comes and captures me completely. It makes me feel like giving up this character and running back to the source. In the midst of this sadness, how can one still carry on with this humongous task of completing this character's destiny and still embrace it?
We have no choice when we're in character to play the part of the character. So that's the first thing. You can't escape the duties and responsibilities that have been assigned to you in this life. For example, you have wife, children, work commitments. You can't just decide, I'm going to abandon all these things because you have duties and responsibilities. Well, some people do wrongly and they run to the caves and the hills, but they cause even more problems for themselves. Because it's based on negativity. It's not a positive action, it's a negative action. Because people are suffering at your expense. So is it really something noble and good? No, not according to the Holy Masters. But it's good that if the person is feeling a pull of love from the Master and is trying to attain higher states of consciousness, this should be welcomed. It's not a trouble. It shouldn't be considered to be troublesome. It should be considered to be grace. Because without that grace of the Lord, from the spiritual practice, one would never sit to think of such things. One would never try to raise their conscious awareness beyond the limitations of physical. So I think it's a very good thing that these happen, and they should embrace it rather than be concerned about it and saying, I feel disconnected with the world. So enjoy it. There's nothing worthy here, as I said in the short introduction, of our praise. Would you really want to devote ourselves or revere this world when we see all what's going on around in it? It's not really a place that is worthy of our devotion, but it is a necessary place that we have to perform our duties. But doesn't mean we have to worship it. Why not transfer our worship, our valuable attention and worship, to something noble and great, like the soul and the Holy Masters and those who've risen above? So the whole point of spirituality is to raise you above that level so that you don't worship the world and all its troubles. So embrace it, enjoy it, do more spiritual practice, and don't fear it.
I was just thinking there, because if I am the person listening to what you're saying, I'm thinking, is it that easy? Are there any steps that they could take?
Yes, it happens gradually.
Okay.
Of course, it's
easy
gradual.
for someone to say, "Oh, just enjoy it."
I'm just summarising it from an answer point of view, to be brief. But this happens in gradual stages. So every day, as you make an improvement in abandoning something in the world that you were so cherishing before, you feel great. So you cherish the fact that you're slowly leaving the world as you gain higher thinking, higher. You say, wow, I used to be really into that now. Now I'm not bothered now. Now I go to the shops and look around and thinking, actually, there's nothing here for me. It's boring. Whereas before you were a shopaholic. Yeah, that's an improvement. That's an advancement. Saves your purse too. It means at least you have some benefit practically. But as things go on, then you stop going to parties and functions. Say, what's this all about? Same old news. Same different people, same news. You know, the gossips and the troubles of the world. I'm just regurgitating all this. I get nothing out of this anymore. It does not satisfy my higher thinking, my nobility. It's boring. Whereas before you relished it. Glass in hand of wine and drink, you wandered around in a party like you're the bee's knees. Now you just look at it and you're the odd one out. Instead of the center of the crowd. These are all improvements, because accompanying this is peace. There's a type of peace of withdrawal, because remember, the ultimate state is stillness. Yeah, the motionless plane, which is the 5th level. So the closer we get to the state of stillness and absorption within our own glory and the glory of that of the Lord, then the more peaceful we naturally come. Peace means stillness. Yeah, non-activity is peace.
Thank you. I guess I would just add there, it's like they're reframing what they're going through.
Yeah, but it's good.
Yeah.
I like I say, embrace it, develop it, achieve it.
Thank you. Because I think that will help a lot of people. Because I think a lot of people may feel like this person.
Yes, it's good. It's good.
Right, I've got 2 personal questions for yourself.
Okay.
When you are in front of your salvation master, what do you feel?
Grateful. Gratitude endlessly. What else is there?
Okay. Second one for yourself. Can you recall the first time you saw your Holy Master's radiant form, and what impact did this have on you?
Without going into too much detail, I don't like to talk personally, but certainly when you encounter the radiant form of the Master, or the true Master within, you realize that the physical, in a way, is not real. So that realization comes that this is just a body walking around, housing the spiritual form of the Master. So why are you bothered about what the physical body looks like, what it does, where it goes, what it eats, you know, and what it wears? And I understand people follow the physical form of the Master in that sense because they don't have the radiant form. When you come to the real form of the Master, the radiant form meaning the spiritual form, I would say it is overwhelming. Overwhelmingly satisfying. Those are the words I can only say to you. Because now you have a means to communicate directly with the Master without having to chase him physically. So, but then again, you have no questions. Because when you reach the radiant form of the Master, you are absorbed in the grace and the love, the unity. You see something which is part of you intrinsically, but it's also separate at the same time. And this gives a telepathic instruction to you. In other words, you stop chattering and you listen. When you come into the presence of radiant form of the Master, there's nothing left to say. You say nothing, you just listen. You listen to the instructions. You listen to the hum of the sound of the Master, which is the Shabad. You enjoy the bliss and peace of that, and you follow the instruction implicitly that's given to you within. It creates a bond of relationship with the Master that cannot be broken under any circumstances. Even then, if the physical Master here was to beat you in front of everybody, slander you in front of everybody, disgrace you in front of everybody, you still love him. Because you know that the real form of the Master is not of this world. And that the character playing the Master is satisfying the audience. You don't mind the audience being satisfied by you being dishonored or disgraced in the company of the public. Because you know it's only for a short while. There's no reality to any of it. But your relationship with the spiritual form of the Master is absolute. And it's not based upon the character you're playing in this life. In fact, the Master never cares about what you're doing. He'll never ask you within, so, how's your family? How are your children? How's your work? He never talks about anything like that. It's always about your evolution spiritually. Nothing of your character at all. Nothing is mentioned at all. Ever. Unless you specifically ask. And then what are you going to ask? faced with the evidence before you of the character being really nonsense, what are you going to ask? Would you really use the valuable time you are with the radiant form of the Master to ask worldly questions? You don't. You listen to instruction.
Thank you. Right, I've got a few questions around the soul. Is our soul just a piece of the Lord or something completely separate?
Well, naturally, if the Lord is the creator of the creation and he's created everything within it, how can the soul not be part of the Lord? And the soul, out of all things created, is the most significant and the most dearest to the Lord. So whilst the Lord has created everything around you, the most dearest to the Lord are the souls he's created, because they're born out of pure love. And the Lord separated himself from himself so that he may love himself. So everyone is none other than an aspect of the Lord itself, witnessing creation from a particular viewpoint. Each soul is a love viewpoint created by the Lord, so he can experience his own glory from infinite viewpoints by having infinite souls. So that is the reason for creation. So the soul is the dearest part of the true Lord, and therefore is the most special in all of creation. So that's the relationship between the soul and the Lord.
Thank you. Is the soul made of light or is it some form of energy?
A physical question, yeah. I mean, the mind thinks in terms of these things because it doesn't understand non-substance, so it has to look at substance. The closest of those two is an energy, but actually it's consciousness. It's a conscious energy. It's not an energy that is based on any material or mental limitations. It doesn't have physical limitations. It doesn't have mental limitations. It's an infinite type of energy that can manifest itself into anything. So the closest answer to that, I would say, is an energy. Now, when we look at the energy from the mind's point of view, it looks like light and it sounds like sound. Because when it's manifested to the filter of the mind vibrating at a certain level of consciousness interprets this energy in a way it only understands, which is seeing and hearing. The basic concept of the mind is to see and to hear. There are other senses lower down, but the higher thing, seeing and hearing. Even the mind realm, at the mind realm, it still sees and hears. So the mind translates it that way. So when we look at it from the mind's perspective, we see light and we hear sound. From the soul's perspective, it's very different. There is still a kind of light and sound, but it's not in any meaningful terms that the mind can comprehend. It is a kind of seeing which is more dimensionally aware than an actual seeing. And the sound, which is a vibration of consciousness, is an energy that emanates from the Lord. So, because it's a vibration of consciousness, we understand vibration makes a sound. So they say there's a sound and there's a light. But when you cross into the realm of the soul, the experiences you have of that light and sound is completely different to the experiences the mind has when it's crossing the mind realms.
Thank you. What does our
Yes, sorry, a question.
Just got a question around the energy. So you know when you sometimes say that you can sense, feel, experience what someone's energy is like.
Yes.
What is that? What does that translate to then?
That comes from the mind first, but also from the soul. There's two levels of experience. There's the intuitive experience, which doesn't require any logical reasoning. For example, somebody can walk into the room. You've never met them before, but you instantly feel something special about them. Even they might be a villain, but you still feel something, that they carry something. And another time you can have somebody walk into the room and you're just instantly drawn away from them. You say, no, there's some bad atmosphere. So we pick up atmospheres. Now the mind has a way of picking up energies too. So there's many different energy levels that we pick up, and it can get confusion for an ordinary individual because they'll not understand why. For example, falling in love with somebody is a mind energy. It's a karmic energy. It has no rhyme and reason, but it's not intuitive. It's based upon karmic connection. So their vibration and your vibration are in tune, so you say, I fall in love with this one. Yeah? And you can't explain why. You can come up with theories. I like the way they look, I like the way they stand, I like the work they do, but that's not really an explanation. There are many other people you could attribute that to, but you don't fall in love with them. Similarly, you can't make somebody fall in love. So if I say, go and fall in love with that girl there, you can't do it. You can't make it happen. But this is a condition of karma, but this is associated with the mind. It's not a spiritual experience. Spiritual intuitiveness is something that transcends the mind. So for example, let's say you fall in love. You also know instinctively that that is an individual and you're an individual, and that you are having some sort of bond, but it is not perfect. Like they recognize the traits of that person being imperfect, but they ignore it because they allow the mind to take the upper hand. So they feel, okay, I'll ignore the obvious negative parts of that character and I still love them, despite their flaws. That's mind. So yes, we pick up energies and we react according to our level of development. So we're in a very emotional mind. We fall in love every minute. Every time we see someone, oh, I love him, oh, I love her, and we're always in love. Yeah, they say they wear their heart on their sleeve. And when you're in a little bit intellectual phase, you calculate, what's in it for me? Because this love game is definitely what's in it for me game. And when that person stops providing what you need, you leave them. There's a very famous saying that masters used to say that even the baby who the mother cherishes so much, while sucking the mother's finger that has honey on it, the moment the honey runs out, the child bites. It's instinctive because the child wants something. If the mother did not show love to the child will ignore the mother. So this bond that's created between mother and child is based on effort. It's based on doing. It's not innate. It's not natural. For example, if a mother and her child were separated from birth and they were to walk past each other in the street, they would not recognize each other. But the moment they're told, this is your mother, this is your child, instantly they create a bond. Where does that come from? That means it's fixed. It's not real. Whereas the feeling you get intuitively from somebody you've never even met, let's say like a holy master, a pull of a love or a pull of enjoying their company, that doesn't require any intellectual intervention. It is a natural helplessness, which doesn't occur with the loves of the world. With the loves of the world, it's always based on bargaining. You see so many couples get married and they break up in divorce. And you ask them why, they say, I'm done with this one, for one reason or another. They're not giving me what I want. Or they're misbehaving, which is also not giving me what I want. Whatever the reason is, it's not lifelong. Whereas a master's love for a disciple is lifelong, even if the disciple misbehaves. The master doesn't stop loving the disciple just because they're naughty for a while. He tries to encourage them. Come on, you're wasting time here. You're suffering. I'm seeing you suffering. Let's get out of this situation. He never judges. But mind always judges. The mind is the king of judges. Soul never judges. Soul reacts to energies, let's say, connections, based upon soul to soul. It's a very different type of experience between the mind and the soul way of communicating. I hope that's answered the question. Yeah. Okay.
Just sort of adding to that, when you said like you fall in love with someone, it's the karmic connection.
Yes.
And I know you also said when they fall out of love, it's because they're not providing anymore. You didn't do this or whatever. Yeah. But is it also a case where karmically that it's finished?
That's right. Yeah. Ultimately, everything is karma. Yeah. Everything. What we like, what we dislike, everything is karma. Our behaviors, our way, everything is scripted. Everything down to the last molecule in the position, right, is scripted. But for the sake of talking to human beings who don't live at the molecular level, I'm simplifying it by saying yes, but you're absolutely right. Everything is karma. So even when you're together with somebody, it has a finite time that it ends by hook or by crook. And then if they're not enlightened, they'll blame each other. This one's done this to me, or this one's let me down. That's why I'm leaving him.
Or sometimes they'll say, we just grew apart.
Yeah, however it is, because that's karma.
Yeah. But they can't put
They don't realise that karma brought them together, and the same thing that brought them together cuts them asunder.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Right. What does our soul respond to if it's separated from the mind? If it's separate from the mind?
The soul responds to love and truth. It's only interested in love and truth. It has no emotions. Remember, this is the other thing. The soul is not emotional. You know, like some people, when they see somebody, swooning in front of a master, collapsing, crying, that's nothing to do with the soul.
Yeah.
The soul is, remember, stillness. So what does the soul do? It fixates in awe. It freezes on the spot in awe and stunning. That's the soul. If it's all like this, that's all mind. It's all fake.
Okay. Because I've seen people do that in front of
I know,
masters.
I know.
And you think,
but the masters also don't like it.
Right.
Because they know it's not true. They know they're just emotions are carried away with them. They have the emotion level, and there's no reality to it. Because that emotion, being so fickle, can 1 minute love the master, next minute hate the master, or doubt.
But I bet if you were to ask that person there and then, they'd probably feel...
Because they're at the realm of emotions.
Yeah.
You can only know what you experience. So, for example, now you're experiencing this room. You don't know what's going on outside. But the moment you step outside and see the outside world, then you start saying, oh, this is happening, that's happening. It was happening when you were in the room, but you weren't aware of it. So wherever level you're at, whatever you're aware of at the time, you carry on with that. That's how humans are. They're very much led by the script. They don't have this wider picture. If they did, they wouldn't do the things they do.
Well, very fickle beings.
Yes. And masters know this, so they just find it charming and laugh at it.
Right. Next question. Does everything on this physical plane have a soul, including rocks, wood, fossils, etc.? And if so, then we have previously been in these forms, or can we come back to these forms?
No, only living forms have souls. Non-living forms are still conscious, but they don't have souls as such. They're formed from a different part of the Lord. They're not formed out of the core of love essence. They are formed out of the core of glory. So they demonstrate the magnificence of the Lord, but they don't have that that kind of deep love which souls have. So souls are born out of love. They are specimens of love, and that love is attracted to other forms of love like magnets. So yeah, rocks and so on, only living things have love.
Thank you. I've got a question regarding the Akashic records. So I'm going to read the statement and I've got 2 questions.
Okay.
Or 3. Ishwarji has often mentioned in his satsangs that everything is predetermined based on the script we have chosen. He has even suggested, by way of example, that we pick our own DVDs, which have many lifetimes in them, just to experience some things in particular, including our journey back home. This thereby suggests how karma is created. And they go on to say, I hope I understood this correctly. So the question is, are those DVDs the Akashic records?
No, the Akashic records are a stage below what Ishwarji referred to as DVD. Let me just clarify this thing about DVDs as well. There's no such thing as a DVD. You don't pick up like an actual DVD and you play it and then you become the character. It's just his way of explaining that the character we pick up has an existence in concept only. It's not in reality. It doesn't actually exist. It's a concept. All infinite concepts exist at the bottom of a region called Parbrahm, which is just above the level of the mind. So before the concept becomes manifested, it exists as a concept. So Ishwarji talked about a library of DVDs. He's just in a very mental framework trying to explain that these concepts exist infinitely in, you could say, in a state of unmanifestation, in the very bottom of Parbrahm. So what happens in Parbrahm is when you cross the Mansarava lake and you take on the stains of an identity, before you even pick up the character, you already have imperfections on you which determine the type of character you will be attached to. So then you and the character bond, for example, in the mind realm. when you cross into the mind realm, and then that character story, when you enter the mind realm in the top of the second realm, then suddenly expands as a timeline of events, and suddenly you're in full character. So that's how it actually happens. Now, the Akashic record is something that can be viewed from the human perspective to see the timeline of events of the character. So the same timeline of events that is imprinted now in the top of the mind realm, you can view it, and we call this the Akashic record. But the origin of that is from beyond. I hope I've answered that question.
Right, there's a second bit,
Yeah.
just to see if you think you have.
Okay.
So after choosing them, i.e. the DVD,
Yeah.
do we then collaborate with the source on how we go to the earthly plane to undergo the chosen experience? Is that the correct understanding they're asking?
It's not a collaboration, it's a participation. Actually, let me explain a little bit further for this point. When we come into this creation, we don't come in isolation. Imagine if you just came on your own here, with no associations, no connections, what will you do? Where is your drama? To play a drama, you have to have people in the play, you have to have scenery, you have to have a place, and you have to have a time. All those things must be met. The only way the drama works is because when you left Satgurus, the attention was projected from each other, about several million, countless millions of you came together as once. You came all together to play your part here in creation. So therefore you'll all bump into each other in one capacity or another, even if it's just somebody you bump into in the street once and you never see them again. You all come down to play the part of the drama. But when you all agree to come and participate. At that point, no decision is made at how the participation will take form, but you all come together. When you enter the Mansarava lake and you take on the stains of imperfection, this is before any karmas. We're still above the karmic realm, so you're not bound by anything, but you take on the stains. Each one is drawn according to the viewpoint of that soul to a particular character in the play. So therefore, automatically they require that stain, if you like, which attracts the imperfectness of that character to them automatically when they enter the very lower level of Parabram, the third realm, at the top of Trikuti, the second realm. And therefore each one adopts a character in the play. So now we're all born together, which populates our environment. And these people each play a separate part according to the character they've adopted. Every part must be played. At that point, the soul doesn't care what character is playing. We care as minds, because the mind is a funny creature. But the soul doesn't care which character is playing. So when somebody says, well, why is he rich and I'm poor then? If I had a choice. The answer is you didn't care. You all agreed to play the characters, and you all play numerous characters within the whole storybook. So how do you know? The other thing is that at the time when you were with the creator in Satgurus, you are one. You don't see yourself as separate. At that point, all souls are alter expressions of you. So in fact, you're playing all characters at the same time. The fact that that soul over there is playing him, and you're you, and that one over there, it looks different to the mind, but from the higher perspective, you're all one playing different modes. So this idea of oneness splitting to the many is there. It's understandable, but it's difficult for us to comprehend because we're so identified with the tool of the mind that we've picked up in the character we're playing that we really believe that the other people in this room are separate from us. When in actual fact, you all started out from a state of oneness. You are all other selves of each other. But you believe that you're separate because that's the whole part of the drama. If you're not convinced that this play is real, who's going to play their part well? So that's why this whole process of first acquiring the stains on the soul, and then acquiring the respective minds attracted to those particular stains, it fits like a glove, right? Then you play the parts in creation, then you all interact according to the script. Because each of these characters have a script associated with them. Sometimes they bump in, sometimes they're separate. And then, when the time comes at the end, they all start getting rescued. So when one person gets rescued, everybody else will eventually get rescued in time.
Thank you. Can I just say, also it's quite hard to not identify with this character.
Yeah.
If people are responding to you as that character.
Of course, that's the play. Isn't it like when you go to a play, when you go on the stage, right, and they give you a false name, your real name is Dave, and they call you Fred on the stage, and every time they say Fred, you respond. That's not your real name, but you're still responding if it is real, because you have no choice. You're part of the play. This one, you have no choice. This is your karma. What else can you do other than respond? However, there's a part of you, 20% of your free time of idle thinking, you could say, where you can explore higher concepts. And along with this play comes introductions to higher concepts, such as talks like this, satsangs, information books, a little saying somewhere you read up. And these are all there to trigger your higher thinking process. It's not a foregone conclusion in the sense that you're damned. No one is condemned here forever. They're here for a period, and when that period starts running out, they start questioning the very character they're playing naturally. Because if you ask other people who are really questioning their character, they don't have the same feelings you've just expressed. They don't believe their character is real. They see everything else as unreal. You'll often hear people saying, oh, it's just like a fogginess. The world doesn't look real to me. It's not tangible. It's not. What are they saying? They think they're going out of their mind, because those ones who really believe in it say, you're crazy. But they're having a very real experience. And that's because their time is coming up when that mind now, the idle part of the mind, the 20% of the mind that does all the thinking and planning and scheming, gets involved in this spiritual activity. It happens naturally, but they don't know. So people are all different stages. And then, of course, the realized ones who've transcended mind, they're not subject to anything of the mind. In fact, they laugh at their own character. And when somebody makes fun of them, they laugh. They say, ha, you found that one fault. I can name 100 that you didn't even know about.
So when you said their time is coming up, what do you mean exactly?
Their time to leave creation, to be rescued.
Yeah. They're going to die, basically.
Not die. They're going to be rescued. So some information will come their way to embark upon the spiritual journey. And it takes several lifetimes, up to 10 lifetimes of the human form, for that spiritual journey to complete. So when the person starts turning back towards their creator, it's not immediate.
Okay.
It takes 10 human lifetimes to get initiated. And then from there up to 4 more to complete the journey.
Okay. Anybody? What was the question?
No, sorry, go on.
Right. The next set of questions are titled Earth and Beyond.
Okay.
So there's a little statement and there's a couple of questions. Can you please shed some light on the dimensions shared on your YouTube videos? First question is, are we presently in the third dimension of existence? And the second part to that is, what is the much talked about fifth dimension or realm like? So they want to know about the third dimension and the fifth.
I think the videos don't say we're in the third dimension, but they talk about the other dimensions. I think this person, when they talk about the third dimension, I mean the third realm of creation. We're not there. If we were there, we would be realized souls, would be free of the mind and the body. We're in the second to 0 realm of creation. So that is actually the truth. We're in the realm of mind, which is the 0 to the second realms of creation. So a little bit of misunderstanding there. The third realm begins the purely spiritual regions between the 3 and the 5th, where only the soul exists in some state or another. And about the 5th realm, the question about shedding some light on the 5th realm, I believe that the question was asking.
Yeah, what is
See,
it like?
The 5th realm is known as the motionless plane. Why? Because absolutely nothing happens there. It is perfect stillness. From the soul's point of view, the more still it is, the more blissful it is. There is peace and bliss in stillness. Because what does stillness mean? It's not the stillness of the mind. It's the stillness of having to do something, having to achieve something, having to be something, having to be anything other than yourself. So, because the soul experiences life through awareness rather than activity, its infinite awareness is blissful and peaceful. So what happens in Satgurus is there is no activity in the 5th realm. There's no wandering around having to do something, doing this. No, there's nothing, absolutely nothing to do. It's just a state of awareness, existence, and that awareness can become more and more infinite. So as you progress, say spiritually within the fifth realm, you're not doing anything as such, because there's no space and time to do anything, and there's nothing to do, but you're expanding your level of awareness to greater and greater realms of infinity, and you place your attention there to those higher states until you merge complete with the one and you no longer exist. And that happens at the state of Anami Purush, the nameless region, where you merge complete in the Lord and you don't even exist as an ocean, as a drop anymore. That's why the masters often say that the drop merges with the ocean. But that doesn't happen immediately, because in the lower levels of the fifth realm, you are at once the ocean but also the drop, both at the same time, just like a jigsaw piece of a puzzle. You could be both a separate piece and the picture itself at the same time. It's a very unique state of existence.
Thank you. What is actually happening on Mount Kailash in India? Is it due to any alien activity?
Obviously, this one's been watching some YouTube documentaries or whatever, this questioner. Actually, Kailash mountain is in India. It's a sacred mountain in India, which is believed to be haunted by Lord Shiva. So people who follow Lord Shiva in Hindu religion, they go to the Kailash mountains because they believe that that's where Shiva resides here on earth. That's not actually true, but because historically certain temples and certain things were built in Shiva's name there, it became synonymous with Shiva. So a lot of people go there for, and this is at the borderline of the Himalayas, they go there for a spiritual experience. Now, also, there are other activities going on there which people have witnessed, such as UFOs or flying saucers coming up from the lake. Because you have the mountain, the Kailash mountain is there, but on one side to it, there's a big, massive volcanic lake, which is very deep and largely unexplored, with very still waters. And people have said that they've witnessed flying saucers diving in and out, flying in and out. And that's where they talk about alien activity. And actually, that's true, because underneath there is an entrance, one of the entrances to the underground kingdom. So these are not aliens from outer space. These are inhabitants of inner earth, which is a subject for another time, that there is a race of humanoids that live within the earth's crust for the last 120,000 years, waiting for humans to become less barbaric so they can come out, expose themselves to the public and live in the surface world once again alongside human beings. Lots of information about that, but again, it's a subject for another time. So it's their activities of coming in and out that people see as aliens. And sometimes they also manifest. They see these giant figures in the distance walking about on the surface because it's so remote that they can come and do their activities. So yes, you could say there's alien activity, but not from outer space. It's very much from within this planet.
Thank you. I've got two last questions. They're around karma. And
Okay.
this one, you've touched upon this already. Is it true that life is a mixture of settlement of karmic records and the lessons we choose to learn? If yes, how do we know which is which? I.e., how does one distinguish between karmic obligations from lessons to learn?
You see, that which happens to you without you instigating it is your karma. It's unavoidable. You cannot do anything about it because it happens without your say-so, without your permission, without your willing, without your needing to instigate. So that which happens like that is what you call your destiny, what has to happen to you, good or bad, however you see it. In between that, we have moments of idleness that I spoke about, you could say, in which we now start thinking, planning, scheming. Now, you could say that that is a lesson for us, because when we plan, scheme and everything and it doesn't work out, we have disappointment when we realize that's not for us. Whether we learn by that or another is a matter of opinion, because I see many people keep doing the same mistakes and never learn. Learning only occurs when higher knowledge is added to that experience to make sense of it. So it's not so much lessons to be learned as experiences. the natural manifestation of the character that the person has adopted will think in a certain way, will act in a certain way. In other words, they'll make a certain use of their idle time. Whereas another person with their 20% of idle time will think of higher things, like they might be involved in a humanitarian project, saving the world. There might be a rocket scientist trying to discover the next fundamental particle, and so on. So each one uses their idle time differently, but all have a base of 80% of their life which they cannot avoid. They cannot do anything about it. It happens to them. So 80% of our life's events are occurrences that happen to us, and we react. How we react depends upon our level of understanding and comprehension of what's happening around us. And out of that reaction, then that we create new karma from that. We also have moments of idleness, because in order to react, we think first. We kind of have a process of deduction and decide what is best for us to do, based upon our personal preferences, not what is universally the best thing to do, but our selfish preferences. Yeah. So the self is always involved in this. If, however, we surrender that 20% that we have remaining of choice and so-called free will to the Lord, then we say we live in the Lord's will, and therefore we wait for the Lord to instruct us on what to do next. We don't rely on our own thinking, our own will. We no longer have faith in it. And that's what we mean by living in the Lord's will. So if somebody uses that time after doing their obligations and performing the things they have to do, they have to react to whatever the demands of the world, that 20% free time, they can then use that to do something to help themselves get out of this place. And that's what spirituality is all about. You know, what can you do to escape this misery of endless, countless births and deaths?
Thank you. Right, this last question as well is obviously related to karma.
Okay.
I'll just read the question quickly, and I'll read the statement after. It sounds as if they had lots of thoughts in their head and they just wanted to get them down, so it may not read the best way.
Okay.
Right, can you please explain how specifically a perfect living master takes on or uses Nam to free people's karma? So that's the question.
Right.
So they go on to say, when you consider more masters involved for one initiate and the past karmas cleared from the point of initiation, then a new master initiates. Is there a new period in that the new master is relieved of taking on past karmas? And if it is so intense for the disciple in this life, I can't imagine what past karmas were about and how master was able to clear up those. How would they do that for the multitude?
It definitely is a convoluted question.
So the first bit of the question, really, what they want to know is...
break it down into parts,
Can you please explain how specifically a perfect living master takes on or uses Nam to free people's karma? That's the main question, really.
You see, from the master's point of view, they only do the service of their own master or of the Lord. They don't act out of their own will. If you're surrendered to somebody, where is your will? When you surrender to somebody else, you follow the will of the other. So when they take on the role of a perfect living master, it's not because they wish to be. It's because they've been instructed by their master to help other souls. And therefore there's a process involved. They're given the spiritual transmission and power to authorize them to initiate people, or to bless them, or to baptize them, or to spiritually awaken them, depending on the culture you come from. And we call such a person who has this ability a perfect living master, because they can save souls. Now, this process is called Nam in Indian culture. So they've used the term Nam, or spiritual awakening, or whatever. But this Nam is because when they initiate a disciple, they give them a holy mantra to recite to control the mind and to protect them. It's also a power of protection. It carries certain powers, and there's a whole separate story about the importance of this holy mantra the master gives you and how powerful it really is. But putting that to the side, this is what a master gives. They first awaken a disciple, and then they give them a holy mantra of protection, to protect them and to help control the mind to think of higher things. And they also place themselves, their radiant form, their true form, their Shabbat form, within that person's eye center, so now they can communicate with them spiritually when the physical master is no more. So, yes, you could be initiated by more than one master. It is perfectly possible, but the Shabad is one. So the Shabad is the same. It's just that the personality or the expression of that master, for one reason or another, is appealing to the mind. So that person then will go for initiation from here, there, and so on. But the Shabad is one. And usually the master that was initiated in the last is the master they'll see first within. So when they go within. And then the masters previously will come in a succession of order. So it's not necessary that once you've been initiated, I think they were talking about a new master or a new master initiates them and so on. It's not necessary that when the physical master leaves that you have to be initiated by another one. What for? You've only been saved. You can't be more saved.
I think they also want to know, how can a master do so many initiations, like all the karma that people have incurred?
The master's not doing anything. The master's obeying the will of the Lord. The mere fact that the Lord has given a list of saved souls to save, and they're simply going through the list, that's all they're doing. They get all the credit for it. The Lord is doing the work. It's the spiritual. The Lord is infinitely powerful, infinitely glorious, has created these multiples of souls. Therefore, he can easily turn their attention to higher thoughts and higher patterns, and higher awakening. So, but the master is just a vehicle that transmits this to the public, so that they have a public face, a physical face, because we cannot understand abstract concepts. We don't have that level of mental awareness that, say, other people have in other parts of the universe, where we can communicate with telepathy and see things in an abstract form. We can't. We need somebody like us that we can relate to. So then the Lord gives this ability to a physical being, which we call a Holy Master, who then transmits that to us. So the Master can initiate multitudes of people on behalf of the Lord. The Master himself doesn't spread himself in multiple places. He's only one physical being. He can only be in one place at a time. But the power of the Lord that he carries within, the Shabad, the light of Satgurus that he carries within him, can manifest itself in each of the individuals he makes contact with. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, that sounds okay to me. Has anyone else got any questions?
Okay, we've finished then? Okay, yeah. Has anybody in the audience got any questions? No? You're all fully enlightened. That's what I like to see. So we're going to now stop for some snacks and some refreshments. And as I said before, if you do have any questions that we want to ask privately, you're most welcome to either have a personal meeting with me now, because I'm going to be doing personal meetings for a bit, or you can email me or request contact details and we can make contact in another way. So with that said, I wish you all the very best, and we hope to see you again next month.
So dehi paje har ki sev pajo gobind pul mat ja मानस जानम का एही ला